Good morning and welcome to day 3 of Career Bootcamp. This morning's session is titled Making Room at the Side of Your Desk. Please note that this session will be offered in English and French simultaneously. To view the French session, please return to the agenda and click on the link pour faire de la place, and you'll be able to access the French session. Before we begin, I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement, and is directly adjacent to Haldimand Treaty territory. Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the GC, and the only goal is to support you in your career journey. As we move through today's session, please share your questions by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. As with all Fin sessions, this session will be recorded, so you can go back to check out the recordings and the insights at a later date. And with that note, I'm going to turn it over to Christina to get the session started.
Great, thank you so much for that great introduction, Haley. Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Christina and I'm going to be your moderator for this session. I'm currently a communications advisor at Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. Now this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. When I started my career in the public service just a few years ago, I volunteered with the Federal Youth Network at the side of my desk, and it has brought so many amazing experiences and opportunities my way, and so many fascinating people into my life. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our learning objectives for this session. The first one is defining the value that volunteer roles bring to substantive roles, preparing a conversation with leadership, asking for dedicated time to volunteer, and identifying competencies gained through volunteer roles and add them to performance evaluations. So we have a wonderful panel of experts for you today. First, we have Rosa Montoya, who is a Senior Project Officer at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. She's also the co-founder and co-chair of the department's Latin American Employees Community. We also have Taiwo Lewis joining us today, who does incredible work in the Office of the Ombuds at Indigenous Services Canada. She's the current chair for the department's Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Task Force. And our third panelist is Tremaine Whited, who's a senior project officer on the Anti-Racism Task Force at Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Now, before we get started with our discussion, we just have a few polling questions, and you should see them pop onto your screen. And we'll just give everybody just, a minute or two to fill this out, and we'll move right along. And I guess soon you'll see the answers kind of go live and you'll be able to see. All right, so for the first question, do you currently volunteer your time to any GC networks on the corner of your desk? Seems like 50% right now say no, and 25% actually say I don't know any networks. The second question, does your manager encourage you to spend some work time contributing? It's kind of split, but a little bit more on the no side, 58%. And then the last question is your contribution to outside networks captured in your PMA or learning plan. And we'll get into PMAs, performance management agreements. Most of you have said no with 85%. All right, this is really great information to know. So now we're going to get started with our questions and move right into the discussion here. So I'm going to ask the first one to Rosa. So first question is, why is contributing to other activities important as a public servant?
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here with you all. So many things to say about this question. When I was thinking about it, for me, it's important because I believe that it really can offer public servants different opportunities to take ownership of their career development. There's three things that resonated with me when I was thinking about this question. And the first one was, I think you mentioned it a little bit, like expand knowledge and also experience. And getting those transferable skills and competencies that you currently may not be exposed to in your current role, or are not offered in your current role. And oftentimes, I think that we tend to go to cost is important to each person. Specifically for me, I started with the Professional Development Network in my organization. I follow with the Women's Network, and then it landing me into creating a space for Latin American folks like myself. So that was one. The second one is like building that network outside of my current unit and my branch in every single position I have been in. So, and I've had the chance to navigate a few units and branches. So this gave me an opportunity to network even more. And another thing that I think I put here is that it can be useful for getting to know a little bit about what others do and also better understand what is out there and explore. When I started with the Professional Development Network, I didn't know that other networks existed. So that was my kind of door in. And the more I exchanged with them, members of this network were also members of other networks, which make me like discover what was out there for me. And the third, but not least, is like finding your own voice within your organization and finding what is important for you, because it can, like, what is important for me may not be important for you, and etc. So for me, the journey meant also exploring, like I said, the existing networks in my organization, but then realize that there was a gap. There was no space for folks like me, and that was the main motivation for me to continue contributing with activities and also like tailor those spaces for folks like myself who self-identify as Latin American.
Those are some great points. Thanks, Rosa. So one thing that I guess stuck out to me is, finding something that you're passionate about. So your day-to-day job, maybe you're not, extremely passionate about that work, but there's so much out there within the GC, you can find something to do at the side of your desk as extracurricular work that gets you excited and makes you tick. So that's a great point. So I guess moving on to the next question, how long should what have you gained as a result of your contributions? So we'll start with Tremaine and then we can go on to Taiwo.
For myself, well, first of all, thank you for having me. But for me, I would say the reason why I'm in the current role that I'm in and have advanced in my career is directly related to putting my hand up and volunteering at the side of my desk. I was able to obtain additional skills and competencies to be qualified for the roles that I wouldn't have been able to gain from those regular day-to-day tasks. Also, new perspectives and building relationships, networking with other people and organizations, community engagement, professional development, even becoming a role model and mentor and leader in my community. Also a sense of purpose, which helped increase my sense of worth and giving back to society, because that has a huge and positive impact. So I would say there are so many gains, and it's different for everyone, but for me, those are the key points. But like I said, most importantly is getting into this position and even doing this. This is an act of volunteering as well, and relationships that I'm building right here in this very moment, and that are going to last a lifetime. So.
Thanks, Tremaine. And I think building on that, for myself, I think everything you said, I completely agree with. And one other thing too is these types of opportunities allow you a chance to kind of push yourself and expand yourself with minimal pressure. Not to say that folks aren't watching, but these are the kind of projects that oftentimes there isn't like a hard, concrete deadline sometimes associated with them. So you are able to really stretch yourself and grow and learn a lot in these opportunities without the pressure many times of having to meet specific requirements and targets. And so they're really great opportunities I've found in terms of pushing yourself and seeing kind of how far you could go. And I think everything you said, I completely agree with. Sometimes your day-to-day, your 9 to 5 isn't exactly what you want to be doing. You may have done other things in the past. This is an opportunity to kind of show what else is on your plate, show what else you have in your bucket, what else you can do. So I know for me, that's what it's done for me as well, in terms of showing folks that this isn't my first job. This isn't the first thing that I've done. I've worked on other projects. And these are the ways that you kind of show different sides of yourself within your workplace.
Thank you both. Yes, definitely. As you do these different kind of extracurricular tasks, and you do really kind of find yourself and realize what really speaks to you. I know for me personally, I always was drawn to different kind of teaching and education type extracurricular roles, and that's kind of how I realized that maybe through this I'd like to be a teacher, and maybe that's my true calling. And it really allows for self-discovery for sure. All right, so let's move on to the third question here. So how much time does your manager have to give you for outside activities? So Taiwo, if you're okay, you can start us off. And then Tremaine, if you have anything else you'd like to add, you can jump in afterwards.
Absolutely. And I think this particularly varies from department to department. This is where having an open line of communication is very important. You can reach out to your HR folks. Oftentimes, corporate services may have that information as well. If you check within the intranet of your department, it may have a portal that kind of explains how much time you can denote. One other way that you can kind of figure that out is, when these side projects come, whoever is assigning it or the team that's developing it really have a clear understanding of how much time is expected towards this project. And that way you can communicate that with your director or manager so that everyone's on board and understands I'm going to be putting aside this much time every week between these hours, or I have this regular meeting that I'll be attending at this time, and set those expectations nice and early so that, your managers can also manage expectations for you and support you in this project, and they can kind of promote the work that you're doing as well. But it's about really communicating that and having open communication in terms of what the expectations are.
The only thing that I would add is that it isn't a one size fits all. And like Taiwo said, it's going to vary from each department. But I think making sure that you're having that conversation with your manager or supervisor ahead of time so they understand the work that you're doing on the side and how it can actually benefit your department and your team. Because sometimes that gives that extra time and value to that work that your supervisor and manager might think that, I'm going to allow for that because sometimes it makes them shine as well. So it's kind of a give and take situation. So just be mindful of that, being open and honest and having all your details ready to have those conversations with your supervisor can really help with the time that they allot you to do that extra work.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely communication is key. It's good to be, honest and transparent with your manager, right at the beginning, about, what you're interested in and how this could help you and maybe the team and department as a whole, for sure. All right, and then our final question before we switch gears to the Q&A, we have, how do you block time in your week or calendar for these activities? And I'll pass it over to Rosa first. Taiwo, Tremaine, if you have anything else to add afterwards, feel free to jump in.
Yes, and I just want to say that everything that is being communicated right now by my fellow panelists, like 100% communication. The two things that came to mind when I was thinking about this question was, one, be specific. Have all the relevant information for the manager to better understand and support what you're seeking in terms of support. Explore the W questions, like, what are the tasks and deliverables, and who is the point of contact for this, initiative, and what is expected at the end, and all those questions that you will have for any given project, like, when, how, who, how are this connected to our organizational, commitments. I particularly found this powerful when I was explaining about my initiative to my department. I was like, well, we're responding to the call of action. IRCC has commitments. So how can I bring something to the table from my experience and from my community? So be specific. Do not underestimate of having like a spreadsheet with all these things laid out, so that when the conversation does happen, you are prepared for everything that will come your way. I found for myself that it works well, because then I can communicate easier what I want to achieve. And the second thing that I have learned is discomfort may occur, and be ready to negotiate. And when I say discomfort may occur, I'm talking about that do not assume that your manager has knowledge of all the extra activities that are available in your organization, or the groups, or the networks, or the communities. And they may not be familiar with the process of approving extra time activities. This may be like a new manager, a new supervisor that doesn't know exactly how it works. And so they may, not be comfortable like having communicating that in the first encounter. So just be ready to negotiate if the initial response is no. For example, when you're preparing your discussion, prepare also your alternatives. Let's say that you know that a certain deliverable is going to take 2 hours, time commitment is 2 hours. Then okay, well, can we divide, if the initial response is no to 2 hours, well, can we divide this tasking? Can I take an hour here and an hour here, or 30 minutes? Or if things move in terms of, oh, this meeting is canceled, can I take the time from this meeting to allocate to this initiative that I already talked to you about? I often hear sometimes managers say, oh, nothing is static, everything is changing. Well, that also applies for this type of work. They have a meeting and deliverables can change, so everything can change. Therefore, be ready to propose what if scenarios. So yeah, but what I say, I think mainly is really be ready to have those conversations, have as much information as you can collect.
Yeah, that was very well said, and some great tips, definitely, that I'm going to try and apply as well. I don't know, Taiwo, Tremaine, if you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, just one thing. And I mean, I love everything that Rosa said, and absolutely love a good spreadsheet, love a good plan. But one thing that these are opportunities for is that, when we're applying for positions, particularly within the federal government, they want you to be able to show and identify, what did you work on? How did you solve it? And what was the result? And I think these build in really great best practices for those types of situations. And side of your desk work is a great example. And a lot of folks think you can only use your 9 to 5 or what your substantive role is to support applications. And I have to tell you, whenever I've applied for a position, I've used everything. It doesn't matter if it's on the side of my desk, particularly if it is contributing to the corporate structure, the corporate policy. It's all important work. And so these types of projects can actually really help boost and pad your resume. And so having that really clear vision of what you're working on, what your deliverables are, what the timelines associated with that are, really help you move forward as you know as you progress through your career.
And I'll just add just a couple points. Schedule it. You know, I often look at my calendar a week in advance and see where I have time to fit in things. Sometimes I utilize my lunch hour and can tick off a few things on my volunteer list. Prioritize it. So if you're scheduling it, make sure it's a priority because you've scheduled that time in. Make sure you take that opportunity to do those things that you scheduled, and then be flexible because things come up, things change, emergencies come in where you're going to have to shift. So just being aware that once you've scheduled, prioritized, there's that flexibility piece that's important, and then being able to utilize your free time. And then at the end of the day, there's always those opportunities to seek support. There could be someone, a coworker, even your manager, supervisor, that might want to join in on those same volunteer efforts, and you can do it as teamwork. So just a few points I wanted to add.
That's great. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of the session. So if you have any questions, you can ask them using the Q&A function. And remember that you can vote for the questions you like using the thumbs up button. So let's take a look at the questions. So first question here we have, how long should I be in a role before I start asking for extra time for outside activities? Who would like to tackle that one?
I can start with that. I don't think there's actually a specific time frame that you should wait before asking. But what I would say is that make sure you're established in your job. Know what you're doing so your supervisor and manager can have that trust, knowing that not only can you handle your job, but you can also take on some other extracurricular activities. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I would say.
Yeah, and just to build on that and build on something that I said earlier as well, you know, oftentimes some of these side of desk projects and opportunities can really meet some of the things that we're passionate about, and they can be passion projects. And that's another name for some of these. And you have to be careful not to let it overtake your substantive role and, you know, your substantive job, because that is actually what you're there to do. And so, you know, the key is exactly master and understand the scope of what your day is. And you can't do that until you're really comfortable within the role and you understand how much time you really need to allot to your core work. And then you can start building in, you know, those other pieces that really supplement what you're doing. And, you know, it will happen naturally, I think, sometimes too. A lot of the work that you find, particularly when you're looking for things that you're interested in and you're engaged in, and you're doing it in a meaningful way, it will happen. I find, it kind of happens in symbiosis, you know. And I think Rosa was, or perhaps it was you, Tremaine, that was saying, you know, you meet people at the same committees and you see people at the same meetings and you realize, okay, well, we're working on this, you know, core project, but we're both part of this committee. And so you'll find that time organically in many ways, but the first thing you need to do truly is understand what the scope of your core work is.
For sure. Yeah, those are some great points. The next question is really great. So it's an important one. I honestly feel overwhelmed by my role alone and the weight of investing time and effort into networking related to growth and advancement, let alone volunteering outside of all of that. How can one find a healthy balance regarding extracurriculars?
I can take that one. Actually, what I believe is that first, let's be kind to ourselves. There is many things that we're passionate about and many things that we want to kind of take on for reasons of, you're passionate about the subject matter or you want to build those skills for future opportunities. But first, be kind to yourself. It's at times in your journey, you have to say no to certain things to find that balance. I think that in most of my experiences, all networks have been very understanding of you can be member of a network, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be part of an organizing committee for the network. Just sometimes when you can, participating on their events, that can be it for you. But I think first of all, it's like set boundaries, and finding the balance is also learning that in your journey, you may be at moments where you're like, at this time, I can't do it. Maybe, in the future, I could. Nothing is static. Things will change. You may be changing jobs and then find another position that is not as demanding, and then you will find the time there. But first of all, set yourself like the boundaries for yourself and be kind to yourself.
I love that, Rosa. And I completely agree. And one other thing too is exactly just picking up something that you said, the doors don't close in many ways. There's this pressure of, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to have the opportunity again. And it may not look exactly the same, but there'll always be other opportunities when you look out there. So if you can't do it right now, just having the faith, and if you remain interested in it, follow as much as you can, and you will find time to hop in when you have capacity to do so. And so, that pressure, exactly what you said in terms of just being easy with yourself and being understanding and realistic about, capacity when taking on some of this work is key too.
Yeah, there have been so many instances in the past where I'm like, oh, I'll take on this, I'll take on this, I'll take on this. This sounds so cool. I want to do this. But then I realized, whoa, I took on too much. And then you have to kind of cut back. So now I'm a little more reflective before I say yes to something, before I take something on. So those are some great points. All right, so I think we have time for just one more question. So I'm going to try and combine two. So one question is, how should I approach asking my manager for time? And if your department doesn't have a culture of encouraging volunteering, how can I show that value add?
I can touch on this one a little bit. I think when you're approaching your manager, you want to be respectful and professional in your communication and making sure you're communicating exactly what it is that you want to do, and the reasons why. I think sometimes when they have that understanding of how important it is to you and what the purpose is behind it, and it speaks to your personal development, I think they're a little bit easier with saying yes. And then also making sure that you're meeting your workload expectations and compromise. Work with your manager on that.
Definitely. Okay, unfortunately, we're come to the end of our session. I know we can talk, there's so much more to talk about, and we can go on forever. But this has been a fantastic discussion. We definitely covered a lot of information, so you can always return back to the video recording and listen in again for a refresher. So I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists for their insights and their advice. And thank you to everyone here for attending and for your participation. So now I'm going to pass it over to Haley to wrap things up.
Thank you so much to Christina and all of the wonderful panelists. This has been a really informative session. Before we end, we do have one final polling question. The results from the poll will not be shared. We just want to know, was this session a good use of your time? Yes, no, or I don't know. Thank you so much for joining us today. In addition to this session, we'll be discussing the Take Me With You initiative at 11:30, Lateral Moves for the Win at 1 p.m., and Leadership Styles That Build Success at 2:30. There is also an opportunity to network with other GC employees, which will take place on Wonder Me from 4 till 5 p.m. This will be a really great opportunity for you to network with some of the diversity and inclusion networks and continue some of the conversation that we had this morning. The link to all of the sessions, as well as the networking event, can be found on the VExpo. As with all of the previous sessions, all of the resources are available on the wiki page, and the recording will be added to the YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.